Hello and welcome to Birth as We Know It. I am your podcast host, Kiona Nessenbaum. I have experienced birth as a doula, a student midwife, and as a mother of 3 amazing children with my husband and high school sweetheart by my side. After attending over 130 births, including my own, I've realized that each birth experience is truly unique. So make sure you subscribe and join me every week as we are guided through many different birth experiences through the lens of the storyteller. Please be aware that some of the stories can be triggering to hear, so feel free to pause, take a breath, and come back and listen whenever you're ready. With that said, let's prep ourselves to dive deep and get detailed about what really happens in the birth space. As a reminder, this podcast is intended for educational purposes only and has no intention of giving or replacing any medical advice. All advice that is given on the podcast is from the personal experiences of the storytellers. All medical or health-related questions should be directed to your licensed provider. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Birth as We Know It podcast. I am super excited to be sharing an awesome birth story with you today. I am interviewing a good friend of mine, and her name is Rita Sakharov, and she will be talking about the birth of her beautiful baby, Raiya. Welcome, Rita.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, of course. So, tell us a little bit about yourself and who's in your family.
My name is Rita, obviously, and I'm 24. I had Raya when I was 23, and she is my first child. I am originally from Washington. I went to school in Arizona, and so I have my BS in psych. And then I moved back to Washington after I had Raya. Some of my hobbies are like makeup. I love doing makeup. I constantly am like doing makeup reviews and stuff on Instagram. So if anybody has an Instagram,
Awesome. Yeah.
I'm on there as well. And then I also do heavy weightlifting. That's like a big passion of mine. So I usually have to go at like 5 a.m. So it's a little bit of a pain, but I've come to love going at 5 a.m., which I know also sounds crazy, but yeah, that's what I do Monday through Friday and work. And then I am first generation Russian, so I am the first one of my family to be born here. Everybody else was born in Russia and immigrated. And then my daughter's birth is the first birth that I have attended or witnessed. So that is a little bit about me.
That is awesome. I'm super excited to actually get into the details of this story. But the first thing I want to start out about, or the first thing I want to start out with is how was finding out you were pregnant? Was it planned? Was it unexpected? Were you excited? Tell me all the things.
So it definitely was not planned. I was in my last year of college and it was in December, and I started getting like really tender like breasts, and I was like, that's kind of weird. Like I usually don't have that, and so I was like, whatever. It's probably just like I'm probably just PMSing. It's whatever. And then that went on for about a week, and I was like, okay, now it's starting to get a little bit kind of weird. And my boyfriend at the time, we were kind of like we were using condoms and like and then I wasn't on birth control, so that was our form of birth control. But then like every once in a while we wouldn't. So like it definitely wasn't planned, but we definitely like understood like what could happen. We just honestly, me personally, I have no idea how he feels about it, but me personally, I just never actually thought I would get pregnant because I've honestly heard like so many times like women, it takes a while and um it didn't for me. I was apparently very fertile. so, yeah, so it wasn't planned, but it kind of worked out good in the sense that it was the end of 2020 that I found out I was pregnant. So December of 2020, I found out, and that's obviously when COVID was happening, and so my school and everything was online, and I was finishing school in like 6 months. And it's funny, my mom and I have like a running joke that she always said, because I've always wanted kids young, and she said, as long as
Mhm.
you have a degree, just graduate. That's all I need. That's all. I just want you to have a degree. And so when I like called her to tell her that I was pregnant, I was like, "Well, at least I'll have a degree, Mom." And she was like, "Oh, thank God for that."
Yeah. Very, very
Um,
close.
yeah,
Close to.
yeah. I graduated when I was about 6 months pregnant, so it was
Nice.
it was cutting it close.
Yeah, you met her requirement though, so yeah.
Exactly. I was like, "That's all you've ever asked for me." And she was like, "I should have asked for more, probably." But no, she was real excited about it. But yeah, it was hard because I was also so I was a full-time student and I was working part-time at Chipotle actually. That was like I worked there for like 2 years. So yeah, it was a little bit difficult, but my managers and everything were really nice about it. And if anybody's ever worked in like food industry, you know how difficult it can be. Because I was on my feet
Mhm.
for like 8 hours a day, wearing like super uncomfortable shoes, and then like the more pregnant I got, the harder it got to like work and everything.
Mhm.
So, but yeah, so back to the original question, it was not a planned pregnancy. um, I go off on so many tangents.
No, no, that's good. That's okay. Um, so how was your pregnancy overall? Did you have any like cravings, any medical conditions, any symptoms that you didn't expect?
I was really sick, like for
Mm.
like the first from week 6 because I found out I was pregnant at 5 weeks pregnant, which is like really soon to find out, but I was really in tune with like my period and everything, so I knew. Like I said, a week after I had missed my period, I was like, something's off. And so from week 6 to week 16, so for 10 weeks straight, I was throwing up every single day, like all day,
Mm.
every day. Could barely keep anything down. It was really rough because then there's a lot of pressure when you're pregnant to eat, and like doctors, want you to
Mhm.
gain weight, and like if I'm like throwing up all the time, I'm like, I can't eat, I can't gain weight, like I can't, get the calories that I need to grow a human. But somehow we made it through those 16 weeks. So it was real rough. And then I also had like high stress from school and everything to try to like still be, like I have to finish my education and everything. So it was really hard to do that. Because like my brain was just like focused 100% on making a baby, not on
Mhm.
not on psychology. But thankfully, because everything was online, it kind of worked out in my favor because I could like take naps in between classes, and my classes were like on the computer, so it wasn't too bad. But and then after that, I had a day in between around my 16th week of pregnancy. I had a day where I was like feeling great. And then the next day after that, I had heartburn until basically the end of my pregnancy. And
Oh
so,
no.
yeah, so I had to buy like a wedge pillow and like sleep at like a 45-degree angle. Like it was really hard to sleep. And then like my butt would get sore because you're like basically sitting while you're sleeping.
Mhm.
um, and it was really rough. And then my boyfriend at the time, he's my ex now. I'm not with him anymore, but he lived 2 hours away from me. So I pretty much went through the entire pregnancy by myself because I was also in Arizona where I didn't have any of my family. I had some friends and everything, but like my family's like my main support. So I didn't have them, and then I
Mhm.
didn't have my boyfriend at the time either. So it was just kind of weird. I feel like going through pregnancy like very alone, because obviously
Mm.
being 23, nobody else around me is pregnant or having kids. Everybody's in college or doing whatever, so it was like it felt kind of like isolating at times because I was like nobody knows what's going on, and I was very protective of myself in my pregnancy, to the point where I didn't share on social media at all. That was like a big thing for me. I just didn't want to invite others to like have an opinion about it because it wasn't their
Mhm.
like journey and everything. So like that's something that I did also throughout my whole pregnancy. Like anytime I would tell somebody, I'd be like, don't share this with like social media, don't share this. Like I don't want pictures of myself pregnant unless like I post them.
Right.
Just because I didn't have, I felt like I needed to protect myself and my unborn
Mhm.
child from like any negative thoughts, even like from anybody. And everybody personally, like close to me in my life, like they were very supportive. So it's not anybody like close to me. It was mostly just like
Mm-hmm.
strangers, on the internet that everybody's got an opinion. So I just didn't want to subject myself to that when I'm like trying to grow a human. So that was like too
Right,
much stress
right.
for me.
Yeah,
um,
no, I get that for sure.
yeah. So that was like my biggest thing during pregnancy was like keeping it off social media, keeping it very personal, sharing it with only like close friends and family. I worked until I was like 30, I think it was like 36 or 37 weeks pregnant. Um, so that was pretty difficult, but we made it. We did it.
Mm-hmm.
Thankfully, like my managers and stuff were like pretty accommodating, and they let me wear leggings because we were only supposed to wear jeans, and I was like, please, for the love of God, let
Yeah.
me wear leggings.
Yeah.
So yeah, so it was like a pretty. I mean, other than that, other than like morning sickness slash it was all day sickness and like heartburn through the last half, it was pretty like smooth. I couldn't really exercise because I went on walks every single day, like multiple walks a day, because I have a dog, so I took him before work and then after work and at night and stuff. So and I actually had a good friend of mine who lived close to me. Her name was Jessa, and she would walk with me. And so she was like one of my really close friends that like knew I was pregnant and would be like, "Hey, do you want to walk
Mm-hmm.
today? How are you feeling? Like, I don't want to push you, blah blah blah." And so it was really nice to have. She knew, and so like, she was like my small source of support, Arizona.
Right, yeah.
So it was really
Yeah.
nice that she like still walked with me even like after she found out I was pregnant and everything. She was like, "Girl, we still gotta get you moving." So yeah,
Mm-hmm.
she walked with me, and that was like my main form of exercise. But I was an athlete beforehand, and now I weightlift, so it was very weird for me to not exercise. But I kind of just embraced it and was like, my body just needs to focus on growing this baby, so I'll just do what I can. I did like yoga, like prenatal yoga and stuff in my room because that stuff's all online. So I just YouTube like prenatal yoga for the first trimester,
Mm-hmm.
for the second trimester. So they have all that stuff. So that was yeah, that was my pregnancy. It was all right. I would say it was all right.
Good, good. That's awesome. I think that's really cool. So at the start of your pregnancy, did you have like any idea of where you were going to be birthing? Like when you found out you were pregnant, did you automatically know like, oh, I'm going to be birthing at this location? Or did you have options of like a birth center? Did you consider home birth or were you like straight to the hospital? Like what were your thoughts on that?
So home birth definitely was out of the question for me just because I was not in like a true home, if that makes sense. Like I was living with like college roommates, and then I knew I was
Mm.
gonna move
Mm-hmm.
move in with my boyfriend, um, like before I was gonna give birth, but we didn't have like a place set up. We didn't have like anything like until literally I was like 8 months pregnant. That's when we moved in. So it was like very much like I was like home birth is definitely out of the way. And I chose a really good hospital out in Arizona, which is a Banner Health Hospital in Gilbert. But then we moved to Phoenix, which was about 30 miles away. So that
Mm.
kind of stressed me out a little bit. But at that point, I didn't want to switch hospitals because my OB was like at that hospital. Like she like worked at that hospital. I don't know how to describe it, but
Yeah.
she like
Mm-hmm.
I'd go to her office and like she's like, this is where I birth is like at this hospital. Um, and so like I followed her obviously and like did that, but it kind of got rough like towards the end where you have to go to appointments every single week, and I would have to sit in
Mm-hmm.
a car 30 some weeks pregnant and drive like 30 miles there and then back. It was always like it was like an all day task for me. I'd have to make sure I had work
Mm-hmm.
off and like all that stuff. But yeah, so I thought I wanted a hospital. Now knowing what I know, that answer will change for baby two whenever that comes. But
Mm-hmm.
I wanted a hospital just because I thought that was like my best bet, my best option. Because it was my first birth, my first pregnancy. I didn't know what to expect, and I figured a hospital would be like the safest way to go in case anything happened. Like they have
Mm-hmm.
all the staff on hand, and emergency rooms right there and so many doctors and everything. So I figured that was like the best way to go about it. Um, I knew about midwives and doulas and everything, but I did not have like the time or mental capacity to like find one and connect with one and
Mm-hmm.
locate one. Just because of like with between moving and just graduating and working and like trying to figure out where we were going to be and like settling in and everything. It was so rushed and it was so happening all so fast that I like didn't even think about a midwife or a doula, which also wish I had that, but I didn't. I did do a lot of research like on different birthing positions and like some stuff in labor. It's kind of hard because you don't know what to believe and what, like,
Yeah.
the internet has so many resources, but you don't know what's like a
Right.
good resource. um
Yeah. Or even
so
just where to start. Like
yeah,
there's so
yeah,
much out
there's
there.
just there's so much out there that it's very, very overwhelming, I would say. So
Yeah.
yeah, and it's hard to know like what to trust because some sites will be like, oh yeah, don't do this whatever you do, and then other sites like, oh, it's fine, it's up to your own discretion. So you're like,
Mm-hmm.
am I gonna like harm the baby if I do this? Like, is that what you're saying? And obviously, as a first time mom and for a first pregnancy, like, I was very cautious towards a lot of things and was like, I don't
Yeah.
think I could do that. So yeah, I
Mm-hmm.
definitely, yeah, hospital, but now knowing what I'm, and I also wanted an unmedicated birth, and we'll get into that, but that did not happen for me, unfortunately. So
Yeah. Yeah, we'll definitely let's like slowly make our way into that. So I guess let's start out with what was the first sign that you felt and realized when you were in labor? Like, did you automatically know that it was labor? Because, some people out there are like, oh, you're going to know when you're in labor versus like Braxton Hicks and stuff.
I didn't even realize I've been having Braxton Hicks for like kind of a long time, like in my pregnancy. Like like Loki had Braxton Hicks for like, I don't know, probably like at least like 5 or 6 weeks or something like that, where every day, and I
Mm-hmm.
had no idea. I was just like look at my stomach and I'd be like, oh, it's making like this weird shape, like, and it's really hard. Like, what is this? And then
Yeah.
I brought it up to my OB at one of my appointments, and I was like, yeah, like sometimes my stomach does this weird thing, and she's like, oh, that's a Braxton Hicks. And I was like, oh, that's what that is. Like, I had no idea what to expect. Like, people say it, they throw it out as if you're supposed to know what that is. And I'm like,
Yeah.
I had no idea that your stomach, like my whole stomach would like make this weird, like jelly bean type shape and like around the baby. And I was like, what is going on? Like, what is this? But it didn't like hurt or anything. It would just get really tight, like really, really tight, and then
Mm-hmm.
it would just pass after a couple seconds. So I did have a lot of
Mm-hmm.
Braxton Hicks, so I was aware of what those were like. But then everybody, also says like Braxton Hicks are nothing like real contractions, and you're like, okay, well, I don't know what real contractions feel like either way, so it's not helpful to me.
Right.
Um, but I did kind of know. So I was supposed to get when I was 39 weeks pregnant. I was still, I think like 2 or 3 centimeters dilated. Like I was not very dilated, and I was sitting there for a while. Like for a few weeks, I was at 2. Oh, and actually, when I went in for my 38-week appointment, my OB was like feeling around on my, like just on my belly, and she put her foot down like at the bottom of my stomach and was like, I don't know if I'm correct, but I think that's a foot. And it was like at
Mm.
the like base, like closest to my vagina. And I was like, I'm pretty sure her head is supposed to be there. And she goes, yeah. And I was like, great. So we did like a real quick ultrasound, and she goes, yeah, this is definitely her feet. Like she is not flipped the right way. And she was like,
Mm.
we need to try to get her to flip. Like, and I was like, oh great. Thankfully, because I did live in Arizona, I went to the pool every day after that and would swim around and just let my belly just kind of like hang and be in the water. Um, and so I did like inversion where I'd like have my knees like up on the bed and have like my elbows on the ground, and I was like at like a 45-degree angle, head down, trying to like get her to flip, and it did work. So if
Nice.
anybody wants to know if
Perfect.
those things actually work, they do.
Mm-hmm.
um,
Did you go to any specific place to learn about that? Like to learn about the inversions or?
I just Googled it.
You got to
I
flip
just
the other way. Got it.
Yeah, I was like, well, if she's upside down, if I go upside down, she'll flip the right way. That was like my thought, and then I like confirmed it. I went online and like looked it up and stuff, and because they were like, we can do a manual inversion, but those are like usually pretty painful. So like try see if you can
Hmm.
get her to flip so that we don't have to do that. And I have heard that those are painful. Like I said, I didn't have to get one, thankfully, um, but yeah, the water, I think it was the water because she had like the pressure was released and she had room to move around a little bit more.
Mm-hmm.
Because I'm a pretty small human and she was a real big baby, so she was pretty cramped in there. Um, but yeah, so then 39 weeks I was like not really like very dilated at all, and it was kind of just sitting at 3-4 centimeters. And then my doctor was like, okay, well, like, since you're not really progressing, like, and she is a really big baby, like, she's just going to keep growing the longer she's inside of you. Um, and she goes, I definitely don't want you to go to 42 weeks. If you're over, that's fine. Like, if you're over 40 weeks, that's fine. But, like, we definitely don't want you to get to 42. And I was like, okay, that's fine with me. And so she said, let's schedule. I had a induction, I believe, is that what it's called?
Mm-hmm.
Induction,
Yeah.
where they were going to induce me. I had an induction scheduled for Friday, and I had on Tuesday. I had a membrane sweep scheduled because they're like, "What? You just come in, we'll sweep everything, and hopefully, like that'll get labor like started if you don't start by then." Um, and then on Monday, which was I was already like, so my original due date I believe was the 6th, and then I think it was like the 8th on Monday is when, or ninth maybe, I started having contractions at 3 in the morning. And it
Mm-hmm.
was like very, very far spread apart. But I could like tell that something was different. Like, I didn't know that it was a contraction, so I definitely was like just kind of confused. But the first one at 3 a.m. did wake me up. Because I'm pretty, like, I would say I'm pretty in tune with my body and I can pretty much like feel when something is off. And so I definitely felt like, okay, that was definitely not like, it wasn't a Braxton Hicks. It doesn't, like, I can still talk through it, walk through it, do all that stuff, but it definitely felt like something. Um, and so from 3 a.m., I like just kind of went back to bed because I was like, I don't think, anything is really happening, but I like made a mental note of it. Um, and then I had contractions for like every, like sporadic. First it started off like every like 20 minutes. So like I had a
Mm-hmm.
really long labor if you consider it from like the start of my contraction at 3 a.m. to like when I actually
Mm-hmm.
gave birth. It was like 33 hours in there, so it was really long.
Mm-hmm.
But I would say like active labor didn't start until probably like 8 p.m. ish. So from 3 a.m. to 8 p.m., I was just kind of like hanging out, like cleaning, doing whatever, eating, taking a nap, like, but I was still having like every 20-ish minutes, or like it would go like 20 minutes and then it would go 10 minutes and then it would go 20 minutes again. So I was like, I don't know what's happening. Like,
Mm-hmm.
but I made note of it because I was like, it's definitely like more frequently than like a Braxton Hicks and feels different than a Braxton Hicks. Um, so yeah, so it's kind of like weird. I didn't know what was going on. And then around like 8 or 9 p.m., I was like, okay, like now they're starting to get closer. Now they were like 5, 6 minutes apart. And again, I was worried because my hospital was 30 miles away. And so I was like, I want to make sure I get to the hospital. Like, I don't want to be giving birth in the car.
How long did it take you to drive that 30 miles? Was it usually like a lot of traffic or?
Well, thankfully, because it was so late at night, there wasn't very much traffic. And also my uh, boyfriend at the time, he was driving real fast. Because we
Mm-hmm.
were like obviously both scared that I was going to give birth in the car. But I waited to leave for the hospital when I was having contractions, probably like no, like 3 minutes apart, I would say. And then that's when I was like, all right, we got to go. Like, I'm not about to give birth here. I'm not about to give birth in the
Mm-hmm.
car. So let's go. And in the car, I don't know if like this is probably why you're supposed to have your hospital so close, because car contractions are by far the worst contractions
The
ever.
worst.
They are the absolute worst because you are just so
Yes.
confined in this. And of course, I sat in the front seat. I should have just went in the back and like laid down or something. But I sat in
Mm-hmm.
the passenger seat, and these contractions, I mean, they were like on 10 already. And I was like, oh my God, like just get to the hospital so I can get out of this car. Like, I don't know what it was about a car contraction, but it was seriously like the worst experience. Um, so we get to the hospital probably around like, I want to say like it was like 11 or 12. Because I kind of, like I said, I waited for like contractions to get closer, and it took about an hour and a half ish, and we were like getting our stuff
Mm.
together and like all that stuff. And so we get there around 11 or 12 ish, and I say like, hey, like I'm pretty sure I'm in labor, like these contractions are like really, they're coming on stronger and like closer together. And they're like, have you been timing them? And I said yes. And in the car they got to 2 minutes apart. And so I was like, okay, like I'm getting a little nervous now. And so we get there and she goes, okay, let me check you. And I think I was at like, I want to say like I was only like 5 centimeters dilated at that point when I got to the hospital. And
Mm-hmm.
this is where my birth experience kind of like took a turn in a direction that I didn't want it to go. Because the first thing they
Mm.
did was they like put the monitor on my belly and they told me to lay down. And they were like, lay down, we will, we have like the screen and everything, we'll monitor your contractions, yada yada yada. And I was like, but I don't want like to lay down. Like I want to walk around. Like I want to walk through the contractions because like I know that that'll help with labor. Because I had done, like I said, some research, and so from my research, I knew that like walking and movement was like the best way to get through contractions. And so when they told me to lay down, I was like, "Are you guys serious? Like, you actually want me to just lay here, like, and do what?" And they're like, "Just relax." And I'm like, "If I relax, of course it's gonna slow down labor. Like, then my
But
body's
even
not."
like, can you relax?
Exactly. Yeah, like I'm like, okay. So and they wouldn't let me get up and move while I was having, because I was still having contractions obviously like throughout everything, and they wouldn't let me get up. Like I asked if I could get up and they were like, "No, you have to lay down." And I was
Mm.
like, "Are you guys serious? Like how do you not like it?" To me it was like mind-boggling that they were telling me not to do it, and like I'm a big rule follower, and so when they told me no, I was like, okay, then I guess I won't. But I was still really upset about it. And
Mm-hmm.
my boyfriend at the time was there. He was just trying to like calm me down and was like, hey, it's okay, like just lay here. And I was like, no, I don't want to lay here. Like this is not the way I want to go through labor. But I, whatever, I did it. And then after an hour, she goes, let me like, let me check again. And she goes, oh yeah, you're not progressing. You can go home. And I was like,
They sent you home?
they tried to send me home. They said, we can't admit you
Oh
because you
no.
haven't progressed enough. So we're going to send you home. I looked at this nurse. I said,
So,
we live 30 miles away. I'm
mhm.
not going home. And they're like, well, we can't admit you. So you at least have to leave the hospital and like come back.
Wait, so all of this, them forcing you to lay down, was in the triage? Like you weren't even in a
Yes.
room yet?
Yes. I was in the
Oh
triage
gosh.
still.
Then I'm
Yes.
surprised that they wanted you to go home when you were dilated to 5 centimeters, because usually the admit like centimeter dilation is 4 centimeters.
Well, so they said I wasn't progressing enough and my water hadn't broken either. And so that's why they were like, "Well, your water hasn't
Yeah.
broken and you're not progressing
It-
fast enough in an hour for us to admit you." And I'm like, "Well, no crap." I was about to swear. I was like, "No
I
crap, like like I'm not progressing. You just made me lay down." Like, of
yeah,
course my
I have
body's not
so
going to
many
progress. Like,
feelings.
no, me too. Yeah, I was pissed. I was like, are you guys serious? And so I was like, whatever. I was like, I'm not gonna like argue with these people. Let's like, we'll leave. There was a hotel across the street. So I was like, let's go check into the hotel for a night. Whatever. Like, it is what it is. Or not even for the night. It ended up being for like 2 hours or something like that. But of course we had to buy the whole night, and it was like
Right.
$150 for a hotel that we stayed in for 2 hours. Like, it was ridiculous. We went and picked up food because we were both hungry at that point. So we went and got Jack in the Box, which is probably not the best. But it was something. They were like the only ones open because it was at that point it was like 1 a.m.
Mm.
So we got food, went back to the hotel. And when we were at the hotel, one of the nurses, as I was leaving, was like, try running a warm bath. Just try that. That could help. And I was like, okay, I didn't think about that. I've heard of water births, but like, I didn't like think of anything like to actually just go sit in a tub,
Mm-hmm.
which would have made a lot of sense because when I was 39 weeks pregnant in the pool, the pressure like release was so nice than like not have that. So I should have thought about that, but obviously I was in labor, so I wasn't thinking straight. So
Mm-hmm.
we get to the hotel, we're eating, we set up, like, I had a little tablet and we set up Grey's Anatomy. We're watching Grey's Anatomy, eating curly fries and pancakes in the tub. Like, it was honestly like, it was
Curly
like a
fries and
nice little,
pancakes.
yes, yes, curly fries and pancakes was what I had ordered. Because I'm vegetarian, so like, what are you gonna order from Jack in the
Yeah.
Box as a vegetarian? Um,
Mm-hmm.
and so we're like sitting there, and that was like one of my favorite moments of birth, which like because like the rest of it was kind of shitty, to be honest. So
Oh,
I'm sorry. Um,
no, you're fine.
and so like that was like a nice moment where I just got to like I actually did relax, and like the contractions in
Mm-hmm.
water like did not feel as intense. I actually felt a lot of relief, and I was like, this is actually nice. Like I could do this. Like I can handle these contractions in the water. Like I can do this. Like this is nice
Mm-hmm.
compared to the other ones that I was having, especially the car ones. I was like, oh, I'll have contractions in a bathtub any day over those car
Right.
contractions. And so we are just eating, and then my boyfriend went and he's like, "Can I take a nap? Like, is that okay? Like, are you gonna be okay?" And I was like, "Yeah, like let's both try to take like a nap or something." Which I'm, 5 centimeters dilated, contracting every 2 minutes. Like, let me take a nap. Sounds like a good idea.
It's worth a try.
Yeah. So I did lay down, and I think for like 45 minutes, they also told me to take ibuprofen and, or no, was it Tylenol and Benadryl or something like that to like
Mm.
get myself to fall asleep or something, or to, I don't even know what it was. Because I told them I was tired but I can't sleep, and so I think they're like, take some Benadryl, like
Mm.
maybe it'll make you drowsy enough, which is like kind of also seemed counterintuitive. Like, shouldn't I be trying to progress labor faster instead of taking a nap? Like, but
Mm.
at this point, I didn't know what was going on. My boyfriend had no idea what was going on. It was just the two of us, and doctors telling us random stuff. Um, and like it's not really like helpful at that point. So we tried to like he took a nap for probably like an hour. I'd like laid there next to him suffering through these contractions for like an hour. Um and then I like kind of like rested a little bit, I guess you could say. In between contractions I was like napping, I guess. Because
Mm-hmm.
at that point they did slow down again because I was laying down and like relaxed. So they slowed down a little bit. And then I was like, and then I had one like really bad contraction, and like really not bad, really like intense. And so I stood up, and then I made him get up because I was like, I cannot, like, I need your support. I need your help on this. Like, I cannot do this by myself. Like, this is really rough.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
so I'm also sad because I didn't know any like birth partner like support positions or anything. Like I know a lot more now,
Mm.
but back then like I didn't know any of that stuff. And so the ones that we did do, I like had my arms around his neck, and he was kind of like holding me up and just kind of like swaying side to side and stuff. So like that one was nice. um I think I tried like the one where you have like your foot up, like elevated, like on a surface. I think it was like
Mm.
on a couch, and I was just kind of doing like lunges, like through the contraction, which that was nice too. And then I think the contractions got to like 1 minute again. We were across the street from the
Mm.
hospital though, so I was like willing to let
Right.
them get a little bit closer. And so I called the hospital in the middle of my, or like in between two contractions, and was like, hey, I'm contracting every, minute, and y'all sent me home, and I'm at a hotel across the street. Can I come back now? Like, I literally asked them
Mm-hmm.
on the phone because I was like, I'm not about to go back in order for you guys to send me home again. Like, that's what we're not doing.
Right.
And so they were like, yeah, 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 like come on in. And I was like, thanks. Like I had a lot of attitude that at that point because they sent me
Good.
away. Like, like they sent me away. I was pissed. I was like, how can you do this to like somebody who's clearly in labor? Like,
Yeah.
hello. And so we get back, we like I think I got dropped off at the front because there was no way I was gonna like walk across the entire parking lot. So I got dropped off like at the doors basically. They took one look at me and they were like, "Do you need a wheelchair?" And I was like, "Oh, now you guys believe that I'm in real labor." Like, thanks. Because I had to like
Yeah.
stop every few feet and like breathe and move through my contractions, and I wasn't making any noises or anything. I was just like, you could just tell, like physically, like I
Mhm.
looked like I was going through it, because I was.
Mhm.
And so we finally made it in. They skipped triage completely this time. They're like, yeah, just get her in a room. Like she was here literally like 2 hours ago. Like get her in a room. So they finally got me in a room. Oh, and while I was in the hospital or in the hotel too, I forgot to mention this. Because at that point I had been working through labor for around 24 hours from like that very, very first point of like that first contraction all day, like, but active labor. I don't know how to break it up really.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
that I'm
No,
not
that's
well
fine.
versed in, but I consider it 24 hours because I was up at that point for 24 hours basically.
Mhm.
So at that point, I like looked at my boyfriend at the time and I was like, I know I said I wanted to do this unmedicated, but if I'm not even anywhere close to giving birth right now and I'm like so exhausted as is, like I don't think I can do this without like something, like, and I had like very much told him like I don't want to do it medicated. I want to do it naturally. I literally told my OB like previously like I want to give birth standing up basically, and she said I will follow
Mhm.
you around the room and catch the baby if I need to, like if
Oh,
that's
that's
what it
awesome.
comes to. No, yeah, so she was my OB was like one of the only people that I felt like was truly like supporting me, but she wasn't there when I got to the hospital. Because she doesn't,
Mm.
it was also the middle of the night. It was like 3 in the morning, so she wasn't there. I just had like nurses and stuff, and so I kind of caved and felt very very pressured to get the epidural, and I didn't want it originally, like, but at that point, like, nobody was giving me any other option. Like, I had no
Mm.
other support, no other options, no, like, or at least that's how everybody, including my boyfriend at the time, that's how everybody was making me feel about it. Um, and so it was like really rough being in that position where, like, that women can do this naturally, and I know, like, I possibly could have done it naturally if I had XYZ. If I had the support, if I had like music playing in the room, which they also didn't let me do that. Like they didn't let me turn on music. They didn't let me like do
Mm.
anything. And so it felt that's kind of where like I get kind of bitter about my birth experience because I'm like I feel robbed, like of something that could have been like I know how magical and how like amazing my birth could have been if I had had
Mm.
the right people around me and like the right people supporting and like advocating for me. Like that's where like my birth would have been way different. Um so yeah, so at that point I was like, just give me the epidural because nobody's giving me any other options. Just give me the epidural and like whatever. So the anesthesiologist like comes because they also were like, you want to do it before it's too late. Like, don't wait too long because then you really can't do it. And I'm like, so y'all are really not going to help me
Man.
through this labor at all. You're just going to force an epidural on me, basically.
Mm.
So yeah, so I kind of just gave up at that point because I said I had no other avenues. Nobody was providing me with anything other than an epidural.
Yeah.
And against every fiber and being of my body, I said, sure. I signed whatever. I was like, sure, give me the epidural at this point, whatever. Like, nobody's helping me. Like, I felt very, like, helpless in that moment. That was, like, a very,
Yeah.
like, that was a low for me. Um,
Mm.
so, yeah, it was, like, it was just not how I wanted it, not how I imagined it. And I was actually very, like, throughout the whole pregnancy and everything, I was aware that, you know, because you don't know your birth, you don't know your body, you don't know what's going to happen. I was aware to like all avenues of what could happen. And so I was pretty
Mhm.
much open to everything. But I always told like my OB, my partner, everybody around me, like epidural is like last resort. If nothing else, like then I'll do it. But it didn't, it felt like I just needed somebody there who knew what was going on that could have helped me through it and then I wouldn't have had to do an epidural like at all. Um so yeah, so they gave me the epidural and like it was nice I guess in the sense that I like slept for a little bit and I couldn't feel contractions, but I also like there's some women who love themselves in epidural birth, like you don't feel
Mm-hmm.
anything, you're laying there, it's so peaceful, whatever. And I'm like, no, I wanted like the like the intense like the I am giving birth like feeling.
Mm-hmm.
And I definitely didn't have that. And I hated the fact that my legs were numb. I hated the fact that I had to get a catheter. I hated the fact that I couldn't feel a single thing. I didn't know what was going on. They would just look at the screen and be like, oh, yep, that was a big one. And I'm like,
Mm.
cool, great. Like, I'm laying
Yeah.
there, like, medicated as heck, like, just like, all right, great. Like, it felt like my birth was happening to me. Like, it didn't feel like I
Mm.
was, like, in control and in charge, like, of my birth. Um, which is why I say, like, I don't want the next birth to be a hospital birth at all because don't want that experience, that's for sure. Um, so then I got to like 10 centimeters, and they were like, oh, the crazy thing too that people don't talk about with epidurals, because like they were moving my legs for me. Like I couldn't lift up my own leg. Like it was just so, like it just felt so unnatural and like almost like
Mm.
inhumane. Like I didn't feel like a person. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and like I said, that's not to deter from any woman who like has an epidural birth. Like I said, some women love it. I just was expecting a much different birth experience and I was preparing
Mm-hmm.
myself for a much different birth experience and I just didn't have that. So it was like very very odd for me. Yeah, and I didn't
Yeah.
like they would put the peanut ball in between my legs and everything and like I like felt bad almost that the nurses had to like move my legs for me and like I don't know, it
Mm.
was just like so weird. Like I just didn't like it at all. And the catheter thing like totally freaked me out. I was like, "What? Like this is so odd. Like I don't want a catheter, but like there's no other option."
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, so
Did they check you at all before giving you the epidural?
yeah, I think I was at like 6 centimeters, I want to say. And
Oh,
that's when they
okay.
told
And
me
then
like,
so,
yeah, that's kind of where they told me like it's now or never type thing. And
mm,
so I
that
was
is
like,
so interesting. Yeah. I mean, I think that that's super interesting because, not every person gets checked before they get the epidural. I would say it's more common to get checked than to not get checked. But when you're at 6 centimeters and then they tell you now or never, I feel like that's bonkers. Like that's completely untrue. Unless they have no faith in their anesthesiologists, because I mean, I've had clients, and this is just the personal experience here. You were also like in a different state, and the policies and procedures are different. But like in Washington with clients, like I would have a client like almost like they would be pushing and they'd be like, I can't do this. Like, I need an epidural. And so they would get an epidural while they're pushing. Obviously, they were in the early stages of pushing. Like, you couldn't see any crowning or any head yet or anything like that. Because at that point, then they're like, is it really worth it? Your epidural may not even work by that time. So, um, yeah, that's so interesting. Very
that's
interesting.
interesting because
So,
I didn't know that either. Now that makes me feel even more upset about it.
oh, sorry.
No, 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 not in like a bad way, but more of like they could have done more, like they could have helped me
Mm,
out more instead of just pushing it up. Like and it was seriously like there was not a single person that felt like was listening to what I wanted. Like everybody was like, yeah, yeah, just give her the epidural. And I'm like,
mm,
shouldn't somebody ask me what the heck I actually want or like see how
mm,
they can better help and support me, like rather than just
mm.
pushing meds on me? Like I don't know. It was kind of like, and then they also tell you that you have to be really still when you're doing the epidural, and I'm like,
Yeah.
hello, I'm in labor with contractions. Like I'll be as still as I can, but like you have
Yeah.
contractions and tell somebody to be still.
Yeah. It's
um,
definitely hard.
yes.
I've watched many a clients go through that, and they're like, "What the hell are you asking me? Like, this is impossible."
No,
But it's
literally,
also very
because
important, but
yes, like I understand, and but then that also makes it scary because like one wrong move and like you're like I don't want to be
they put
paralyzed
the pressure
either.
on you for sure. Right, right.
Yes.
Yeah.
So you're like, but dang, like I'm in the middle of contractions, like I can't just be
Mhm.
still. Y'all better be
Mhm.
fast. The anesthesiologist was actually really nice and really chill, so that was nice. But didn't
Nice.
want the epidural in the first place, so
Yeah.
um. But yeah, so then I got to like 10 centimeters, and my water broke like right before I was supposed to start pushing, like right before.
Mm.
And because I had an epidural, I didn't feel like the gush. I didn't feel like anything. They basically were like, "Oh, your water broke," and I was like, "Oh, nice." It was like a very weird thing. And so I was having like really obviously really intense contractions, couldn't feel anything. Then they like were like, okay, we got to get your doctor in here, and I was like, yeah, that would be nice. Like at this point, like I was at 10 centimeters, like they were preparing me to start pushing, and my doctor was still not in the room, and I was like,
Mm.
shouldn't she like be here like by now?
Mhm.
Um, and so that was weird. I don't know what she was doing. But anyways, so they get my like legs up in the stirrup, which also I did not want to give birth on my back. That was like another big thing, but because of the epidural, didn't really have any options. So like they threw
Mm.
my legs up in the stirrups like and basically said like okay, you can start pushing. And I was like, okay. So they like told me like they timed it with my contraction. Obviously I couldn't feel it, so they had to like tell me like, okay, start pushing now. So I'd started pushing, and there's also like different ways of pushing that I didn't like I knew about and that they didn't, which was crazy because like the
Mm.
way that the the pushing I guess like technique that I had heard about and that I had like read about that is most common is a lot of women hold their breath while they do it. But like I wanted to breathe through it and like I felt like I don't know, like that's what I had read, and so like I was trying to breathe through it, and they were like, no, 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 don't breathe, and I was like,
Mm.
don't breathe. What do you mean, don't breathe? And they're like, you just need to bear down, but don't breathe, and I'm like, that literally does not make any sense. Like, how am I supposed to not breathe? So it was like really weird that they were telling me that, and I was looking at them like they were crazy. I was like, "What do you? I am gonna breathe if I want to. Like y'all have taken enough of my, birth experience away from me. If I want to breathe through this, I'm gonna breathe through it." Um, so I was like
Yeah.
breathing through it, whatever. They were not happy. They were not happy about it. I didn't care at that point. And honestly, like I had probably one of the fastest deliveries they have ever seen and I didn't know because the nurse came up to me when I was about to start pushing and she goes, just so you know, a lot of first time moms end up pushing for around 2 hours. And I
Mm.
looked at her like, are you serious? 2 hours? And she was like, yeah, yeah, 2 hours. And I said, absolutely no way in hell I'm taking 2 hours to push this baby out. And she was like, that's normal, that's common. And I looked at her and then I looked at my boyfriend
Yeah.
and
It is. It's kind of crazy.
but for me, I was like, that's insane. Like, there's no way. Like, I'm literally like, the baby's right there. And
Yeah.
I looked at the nurse and I looked at my boyfriend and I said, no way. And I pushed Raya out in 15 minutes.
Nice. That's
Because
beautiful.
I was like, no, I am not doing that. I am getting her out. I will give these, I think it was only like 4 contractions worth, to be honest. It was not
Mhm.
a lot at all. It was 15 minutes. I think it was like, yeah, probably around maybe 4 or 5 contractions worth of pushing. To the point where my doctor barely made it. That's why I was like, shouldn't she already be here? Like, because I'm literally
Mhm.
like,
You're like, I
I,
know that this
yeah,
is
I'm
gonna
like,
go. So.
I'm not gonna take 2 hours.
Mhm.
So she comes like running in. She didn't have time to put on like face stuff, like a
Mhm.
plastic shield or anything. So when Raya came out, my amniotic like fluid went everywhere and like literally doused her. Like I doused her in amniotic fluid, and she like got it in her mouth and everything. And I was like, that's disgusting.
Oh
Um,
gosh.
but I was like, but that's also your fault for not having like anything on your face. Like, I
Yeah.
don't think I would want to be that close to like somebody giving birth and not
I mean,
have at least like a mask on
honestly,
your, you know?
yeah. I mean, honestly though, like before COVID, doctors usually maybe would wear like protective glasses. Like they wouldn't usually put a mask on or have a face shield on, like at
Oh
least
yeah.
where I was practicing, just because they're like, all right, cool, the
Yeah.
possibility of getting splashed or peed on or whatever is there, but it's it's common, but I don't think it's common enough for people to be like, okay, let me like suit up.
Yeah.
But I
Yeah, I
also had that experience with Kavina. I sprayed the heck out of my doctor, so.
yeah, so, 'cause I guess I had a lot of fluid. Yeah, so she got
Mm-hmm.
face full of amniotic fluid. I was like, ooh, that's
Yum.
gross. I literally think I said that to her. I was like, that's nasty. Because I had an epidural at this point, like it was what it was. Like I couldn't feel anything, and I was like, "Ooh, that looked rough for you." Like I couldn't feel it, but looked rough on your end. And I remember so after like I had delivered, she held up Raya. Like we have a picture actually of it, of her like holding up Raya like to the light. There was like a spotlight on her. It was like the craziest thing. And so I remember like I looked up because like when I was pushing, I was kind of like had my head back, and so when I like looked up and I saw her and she was like holding her like up, it was like this like angel moment type thing, like because I had the light on her and like she was just like holding her like so, just like perfectly posed. I don't even know. Like she was the cutest little thing.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like the most insane like realization, but also like I couldn't believe I'd actually done it, and like I couldn't believe that like I had actually given birth and like had a baby. Like there it, like there she was, like
Yeah.
like she's really there. Like this wasn't just me imagining it. Like she's really really there. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and so they put her on my chest, pretty much like right away, and like obviously I was just like crying, and I was just like, what? Like what is going on? Like there's an actual human that was like inside of me and now she's on me. Like what is going on? Like it was so I couldn't like grasp the concept. Like my brain was like not processing it at all.
Mm-hmm.
um and so yeah, so it was just nuts. Like and like the whole thing was so fast cuz 15 minutes of pushing. So like it went so fast. I actually do have a video of it as well. I have a video recording of it. Because I don't think
Nice.
I have shown my friends, but I have never watched it because I'm like, I don't want to, I don't, I lived it.
Brings back
I
too
don't need
many
to
memories.
relive it.
Yeah.
This is me, all the details that I have are from me never watching that video. So
Mm-hmm.
I feel like it's
I
good enough.
mean, I don't think you have to watch the video to even know the details. You were in it. You were doing it.
Exactly. Yeah. So,
Yeah.
yeah, so she held her up.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't do delayed cord clamping because I didn't really know about that. Um, and then I don't have a memory of birthing my placenta at all.
Hmm.
I think that has majority part to do with the epidural. I just didn't even like feel it or anything. I did encapsulate my placenta, and the hospital also had a big pushback on me on that because they were basically just throwing shade about it, like she's taking her placenta home and like, ooh, and I was like, why do you have to be
Mm-hmm.
so mean about it? Just let me, it's my placenta, like, came out of
Mm-hmm.
my body.
Did they, and yeah, I'm sure they had you fill out like a form.
Yeah, they had to fill out a form,
Yeah.
and the nurses were all looking at me crazy, and like my doctor, that was the one thing my doctor and I did not see eye to eye with, because she was like, I don't trust the process, and I was like, you don't
Mm.
have to. It's not your placenta, it's mine.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, so we got the placenta out to the person, and then it was just like a whirlwind of just stuff happening around me, and I had no idea. Like, I don't even really remember the first like 48 hours of like when I actually gave birth. I remember we did a lot of skin to skin. I had no idea because like nobody tells you what to do like when you actually have your baby, and so I
Mm-hmm.
didn't know what to do. And so the first thing I did was I just put her on my boob. Like, I was like, yeah, that seems what I should
That's a
be
great
doing.
instinct. Yeah.
Yeah, I
Mm-hmm.
was like, this seems right. And she latched immediately, like no issues, no nothing. It was so nice because I've obviously like was prepared for like if anything happens, like like babies don't always latch right, and it could be really painful, and like obviously everyone always tells you like the horror stories and like the bad stuff. Nobody told me like
Mm-hmm.
it could also go perfectly fine. So,
Yeah.
for me, like it went perfectly fine. And I really, really enjoyed breastfeeding. pretty much she loved just being on my boob. She loves food to this day, so she was born an eater. So it was
Nice.
really crazy when um because like I didn't realize that your milk nobody told me that your milk doesn't actually come in like until like a few days after. So I didn't know that.
Right.
I thought like there was just already milk there. Like I had no idea. So it was just
Mhm.
like the colostrum and everything that she was getting, which was enough for her at that time and everything. And then a few days later, my milk came in and my boobs were huge, like
Mm.
two or three sizes. Like I went up two or three like bra sizes um when my milk came in. It was nuts. It was so I was like, oh my,
Yeah.
and I'm very, very small chested. So it was like a crazy experience for me. I was like, oh my God, this is what it's like to have boobs. Like this is crazy. Um but yeah,
Yeah.
so and then I did start pumping almost immediately because they also I don't remember how that became a thing for me, but I think I wanted to have like a stash just in case, and my boyfriend at the time like wanted to be able to feed her. I didn't pump actually. I think it was like 2 weeks. I didn't start pumping, but 2 weeks old. That's when I started like pumping with her. Um, and then I kind of realized that obviously like when you pump, you're letting your body know that you need to be producing more milk. And so then I
Mhm.
would get engorged. And I did actually get mastitis once, and I thought I was
Mm.
dying. Like, I literally thought I was dying. It
Mhm.
was the worst. I woke up in a full sweat, shaking, like, fever, like, runny nose, like, everything. But I literally felt like I was dying. And then my boob hurt
Mm.
so bad. It was my right boob. And there was like this bright red like spot on it, and it was like rock solid, and I was like, oh my God, I know this is mastitis, like this is so painful. And I did go and get like antibiotics for it and stuff, but other than that, breastfeeding was going really, really good. I did stop pumping because I was a stay-at-home mom until she was 9 months old. Um and so I like didn't feel the need to pump extra because like I'm always there.
Mhm.
So I stopped pumping, which my boyfriend didn't like that either because I don't know, he wanted to feed her, but I was like, there's other things you can do, like feeding her.
Mm.
Let me feed her, like that's my that's my thing.
Yeah. You're like okay with taking over that task. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm like that's the one
Completely.
thing I
Mhm.
can do. If you want to do all the other stuff, like you go for it, but like I will feed her.
Mhm.
So yeah, so it was yeah, that was my birth story, my breastfeeding journey. I breastfed her till she was 13 months. Um, and then she just kind of naturally weaned herself off of it. She loves food, like I said, so she just wanted to eat more, and like milk was
Mhm.
just not cutting it for her. She was not attached in that way. Um,
Mhm.
and like even for like a snack, like she'd rather have like an actual food snack than like boob. So yeah,
Yeah.
I
I
thought the
mean,
transition was
sometimes
gonna
they
be
just
real
know.
hard.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought it was gonna be
Oh
a lot
yeah.
harder because like I've heard a lot of like yeah, some you have to like put band-aids on your boobs and like tell them you have ouchies and stuff, they
Mhm.
don't want to stop, and I'm like, I don't know, like Ryan just kind of was like, all right, I'm out, I'm done. And I was like,
Yeah.
oh, okay. Like it was a very like overnight kind of thing. She just
Mhm.
one day she woke up and she just didn't want to nurse, and I was like, hmm, okay, I guess we're done. Like, and it was when she
Mhm.
right around 13 months, and I was like, well, okay. So that's
Yeah.
kind of wild.
Well, that's so awesome. Yeah, I I love your birth story. I The reason why I love it so much is cuz it's your experience and it's you're very like in tune with what your desire was and how it changed to be different, but then you're still happy obviously with the outcome of having your beautiful baby. Um but it was also a learning experience, of figuring out what will or will not work for you in the future and how you're going to want your options to be different and change. So I think that that's great. And I think it's awesome that you had a pretty solid breastfeeding experience with Raya also.
Yeah, I was really kind of adamant about the breastfeeding. I just like, I don't know. I felt like I was gonna make it work no matter what, and thankfully
Mhm.
it was pretty easy. Besides the mastitis, that was rough. But other than that, it was pretty easy, and I just made sure like to, do everything right after that, so I wouldn't get mastitis again. Um,
Mhm.
But yeah, and I yeah, definitely next time I want to do a birth center. I don't think I could ever do a home birth. I don't know, it's just not for me
Mm-hmm.
personally, but
No,
I
yeah,
definitely
that's
want
totally
like
fine. Yeah.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I definitely want a birth center birth, and I definitely want like a midwife with me and like and a doula and everything. Like I want a team next time. Like I want to go in like ready, and I want people
Yeah.
who know what's going to happen and who know how to help me like the best.
Mm-hmm.
And just people who are experienced. Like that's just I just want somebody to know what the hell is going on. So
Yeah.
that I don't
Yeah.
have to be the one who has to tell people what's going on, you know? Because that's kind of
Yeah.
how my birth experience was this time, and it was kind of just that's when things went awry, is when nobody else knew what to do or how to help me, and I didn't
Mm.
have the energy to tell somebody this is what you should be doing. Like I didn't want to be
Right. Yeah.
dictating when I'm in
Yeah, and
labor.
in that moment, you shouldn't have to. And so it just goes to show
Exactly.
like how some people have the intention to have like a rigid schedule. And I'm not saying that this is your experience, but like there are people that do experience some births, whether it's like in or out of hospital births. They have a provider that just is like one of those providers that's like, hey, all right, I gotta make it to dinner tonight, or like they're on this schedule of like not talking to you through your options, or just being like looking at your birth basically as a number, or like just part of their workday rather than an individual experience.
Yeah, and that's
So,
definitely how I felt. And I don't know if that was like the hospital that I was at and the provider that I had and the nurses that I had. Like, it could just all be like an unlucky chance in my favor that that's how it was. But I
mm,
also know now, obviously, like how a birth can be. And
mm-hmm,
so that kind of like definitely, like I said, yeah, I don't regret the birth I had. And obviously, like I have Ryan now. So, like, and everything went smooth retrospectively. Was
mm-hmm,
that the birth that I wanted and the birth that I expected? No. And now I know what I can do to like make it better next time. So, and now I just go around advocating for anybody that I know is pregnant. I'm like, do your research. Get a midwife, get
mm-hmm,
a doula. Like even if you're in a hospital, that's fine, but like no, you don't have to have an epidural, and there's ways to get through it, and there's different positions and birth partners and all the support, and you can play music and you can tell everybody to F off and leave you alone. Like, you don't have to, like succumb to like that pressure.
mm-hmm.
But yeah, so now I just try to use my story to like advocate for others that like you can have the birth experience that you want. If that is an epidural,
Yeah,
hey, more power to you. But more
yeah, yeah,
oftentimes than not, women who want unmedicated natural births get pressured into otherwise. So at least that's what I've, heard and seen and experienced myself. So I
yeah,
definitely want to like support women in that sense of like you don't have to do that. You can take
yeah,
control of your birth.
yeah. So would that be your advice to the listeners, is do your research so you can have a little bit more control of your birth?
Yeah, because it is just a really scary experience, I would say. At first, you don't know what's going on. And the
Mm-hmm.
more educated you are, the more. That's why I think, like, now knowing what I know, I want everybody to have a midwife and everybody to have a doula, one or the other, or both if you can,
Mm-hmm.
because they know what they're doing and they have seen and experienced so many different kinds of births. And they're there that when you cannot, like, mentally, talk or whatever, they know what you need and they can
Mm-hmm.
help you achieve the birth that you want. So yeah, so I guess that would be my experiences for everybody. Just get educated and,
Mm-hmm.
or my advice is what I meant to say. My advice for everybody would be to get educated, get a midwife or a doula or both if you can, and
Mm-hmm.
make your birth experience what you want it to be because you have that power to
Yeah.
do so.
Yeah. And like in addition, just like adding on to that advice is there are some people that don't have the option of doing an out of hospital birth or even utilizing a midwife. So if that's the case, definitely try to get a doula if that's what you need, or just like educate your partner enough, or go to classes, childbirth education classes, so that you're aware of like all of the things that you can do in your situation. Because like not all hospital births are horrible, right? And so
Yes, yeah.
like
And
yeah,
my hospital
and so
birth wasn't horrible, it just wasn't what I wanted. So,
right,
disclaimer, I
right,
guess I should throw out. It wasn't a horrible experience. It's just not what I had envisioned. So, but yeah, sorry,
Yeah,
continue.
yeah. No, that's good. And I think that that's important to say too, is like, part of this podcast is to like embrace and like bring front the different experiences that people can have. Because a lot of people have really intense hospital birth experiences, and a lot of people have really intense and sometimes regretful like out of hospital experiences because like emergencies happen, or there was this unexpected thing, and things like that. But I'm just so happy that I got to listen to your story, and I'm happy that I got to hear about your breastfeeding experience and the advice that you put out. So like, to round it all up and to like end this episode with one word, like what's one word you would use to describe your pregnancy, labor, and birth experience, like how it made you feel?
That is so hard, boiling it down to one word. I guess the first word that comes to mind is wild. Like,
Mm,
that's like the best, because everything to me was so eye-opening. It was so, like, it was just truly wild. Like, you feel very like primal and very like,
mm-hmm.
I don't know, like it was just wild. Like the whole thing. I
Yeah.
have a better, I wish I had a better word for it, but like for me, like it was truly, like, I guess eye-opening would be a good one too. I don't know, but the first
Mm.
word that came to mind when you asked me that was just wild. Birth is wild.
I love
Um,
the word wild. I think that it fits definitely in every sense of the word,
yeah,
with the primal part, the like unable to make decisions part, the vulnerability, like all of it. It's like, it's all wild. It's definitely a
it's just
wild
like,
experience.
yeah. This is my encompassing word. It was just all of it falls under. It's just wild.
Yeah.
Yep, that's it. That's the
Awesome.
word for me.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Rita. I'm so happy and I'm really excited and I'm honored to be able to share your story out there with the world.
Thank you so much for having me. I've been so excited to do this, and I've been telling everybody, I'm like, I'm gonna be on her podcast. I'm so excited. So, thank you for having me, and thank you for listening to my story, and for sharing, and for being an amazing mom and person yourself.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, of course. You're such an amazing mom. We have to get together for a play date soon with the babes because they're
I
not
know.
very far apart. So,
I know. This weather
yeah,
is starting to be nice. So, park days, they're on. We're on.
we are on. We'll get out there. Just hopping back on to say that it was truly so much fun recording this story with Rita. She's amazing and her birth story is amazing, and it just goes to show that not all births end up as you anticipate them to end up, but you can also learn from them. And you can tell throughout Rita's story that she was very passionate about her birth experience and how her birth experience will impact the decisions she makes with any future pregnancy she may have. And with that said, let's talk about the future episodes. So, next week, we have the amazing honor of listening to a twin vaginal birth experience. I am so excited because Kendra Buchholz is my chiropractor, but she is an amazing person and she's the owner of Inner Urban Chiropractic and she serves people of all ages, but her focus or her business has kind of organically gained this focus on serving pregnant people throughout their pregnancy and postpartum, as well as children. So she sees people of all ages, and I'm super excited to share her story because it is such a beautiful experience, and it just goes to show that when you strongly advocate for your desires and listen to your gut, you can have a positive birth experience. So tune in next week to hear Kendra's story. Thank you so much for tuning into this episode today. Don't hesitate to share this with your family and friends. If you liked this episode, feel free to leave a review so my podcast can pop up for others and they can see and listen to it as well. If you have a birth story or experience you would want to share on the Birth As We Know It podcast, head over to KionaNessenbaum.com and fill out the guest request form. That is KionaNessenbaum.com. I look forward to connecting with you again soon. Bye for now.